Velkommen to Forfelliness Belly Sting. A show dedicated to aligning a journey to a better mental health using the understandings of the ancient Norse. Join us each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Alaska time. Someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiance, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering, a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them. Look at that.
Today, we pray, we pass our energy across our auras, that those who are seeking a path to recovery find their path. Good morgen and happy Tears Day to you. I pray this week is starting off wonderfully and that the energy that you seek, you are finding. Today we talk about the courage of tear. We talk about the courage of digging down deep within ourselves to find that truth that is ultimately our unique interpretation of reality. Before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out and thanks to all of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed on the many different channels, whether it be the audio, whether it be the video, especially those of you who have found your way to New Reality TV. newrealitytv.com is a streaming channel dedicated to a plethora of perspectives that hopefully will offer something that resonates within you to help you move to your next evolutionary step along your spiritual journey. I also hope that for those of you who may have some extra coins jingling in your pocket, looking to put them to a good use, check out our donation site, pay.akoutlaw.com, and there you can find a way to donate as much or as often as you like to help us to promote this message, whether it be on the electronic platform or as we travel around the world and interact with individuals in all forms, in all places that they may find their spiritual journey. If you happen to find that you still have questions about me, my teachings, my shows, my books, or even my life coaching service, by all means, check out my website, norsewhispers.com/coaching. There you can find out all you can about me and my message. Welcome. This morning we're talking about the courage of Tyr. Now, for those of you not versed in Norse legend and lore, Tyr, of course, being the god, well, he was recognized for a multitude of things. Early in his Germanic exposure to human life on Midgard, we regarded him as the kind of the god of war. That would migrate and evolve as he also sought justice and law. He sought equivalence and balance. Most importantly, that balance. And ultimately, he would be the one god that would be willing to put his hand in the mouth of Fenrir, that Fenrir may be chained and held in place until Ragnarok, and of course lost a hand in that endeavor. Therefore, many people refer to Tyr as probably, among many other things, he would be the god of courage. Certainly that role model of having fear and being able to power through it. Well, today that kind of lays the groundwork for what we're going to talk about. I'd like to talk about our courage, but not our courage to go into battle, not our courage to go to do new things, but the courage to see and reveal the self, ourselves, understanding our beliefs, our virtues, our values, and pushing away that need for inclusion and that need for surrendering those things to be accepted. We're going to push past all that, and we're going to look at who we really are. Throughout our lives, my ancestors have described kind of our intrinsic heart, if you will, the emotional interchange between the experiences of reality and, of course, our memories, is this thing called the well of the self. Now, we've spoken about it quite frequently, and quite honestly, I think it's a wonderful visualization that helps us to understand how this works. Well, when we receive some type of sensory input after the imagination manipulates it, and our mood, remember our mood is going to manipulate it even more, that energy, that converted image of reality, whether it be through the visual, audio, smell, taste, touch, whatever, that experience is converted into an energy that's passed using bioelectricity into the well of the self. One of the greatest analogies that my ancestors have offered me is this well of the self. This well of the self is a well, unlike a standard water well that you find in rural America or rural wherever you are. Essentially a deep hole about half filled with water, and at the very bottom of that well is a stack of rocks. These rocks come in all different sizes and colors and shapes, and they're beautiful. When we look down through the well to this stack of rocks at the bottom, it's a beautiful image, and it's unlike anyone else's ever, right? Because what's going to happen is many people throughout, particularly in the earlier part of our lives, are going to donate rocks to our well. They're going to put in their values, their virtues, their belief systems into our well. They're not going to do it on purpose. Well, some people will do it on purpose, but most of the part, people kind of donate these rocks based on the level of authority that we give them. So, as an example, when we're very young, our mother probably has a fairly strong influence. She's going to put a lot of those rocks in there for us. Now, for those of us who are born with older siblings do the same thing. They're going to put some of those rocks in there. Younger siblings, not so much, but they still will have some rocks that they'll put in there. Now, as we gain in our biological age, and we begin to have friends and peers and other authoritative figures in our lives, all of them are going to donate rocks to our well. Some of them do it inadvertently. They're going to not pay attention. They're going to be doing their own thing, being themselves, their authentic self. And just by us watching them and providing some level, remember, we provided them with some level of authority. By providing some level of authority to them, we're essentially giving them permission to put rocks in our well. Now, these virtues, these values, and these belief systems are all going to stack kind of willy-nilly within the bottom of the well. If we look down on the well, your stack of rocks, if you will, at the bottom of this well, is unlike anyone else who has ever lived or who will ever live. That's how unique it is. It is just as unique as you are. Now, as we cast this energy stream, remember we just converted and we're passing down, we're going to pass this energy stream into this pile of rocks. Now, like a stream of water falling down, it's going to hit the first rock. And then it's going to bounce off that rock and hit this rock, and then bounce off that rock and hit this rock, and so on and so forth. Back and forth and back and forth. Maybe some of it will come back up and go over there and come over here. Ultimately, every time it hits a rock, that rock donates a little charge of energy to the stream, to that experience. So, as we get through the whole pile, at the bottom of that pile of rocks is the converter that's going to convert this energy stream into biochemistry, into the hormones and all the chemistry within the body that will then traverse from the heart through the bloodstream back up to the brain, where it's going to be received at this, what my ancestors would refer to as the horn of feeling. Now, the horn of feeling is simply that. It's simply the conversion process of going from biochemistry now back to bioelectricity or energy. So we're going to convert it from the energy that was created from the sensory input, passed through the mood ring, down to the well of the self. It's going to bounce through the values and the virtues and the belief systems till it arrives at this conversion point where it's going to be converted into the biochemistry that your body makes, that can only be made, in all of existence. This biochemistry can only be made in this physical form. Right? And so these rocks and your mood ring and your conversion process, all of that is incredibly unique to the physical experience, to living a physical life. Now, as this energy stream comes down from the mood ring down into the well of the self, and it's bouncing off rocks to get to the bottom, all of this energy is being added to the stream, to the experience. When it arrives at this conversion point at the bottom, and it's being converted into biochemistry, it's converting the biochemistry of everything involved. So all of our belief systems, all of our virtues, all of our values are all now attached to this energy stream. And that is what's converted to biochemistry. So a lot of people say, well, that experience didn't mean a whole lot to me. Yet, from an energy perspective, it was wildly crazy, and it created this, maybe even to the point where it created physiological symptoms. You were stressed out, or rapid heart rate, or anxiety attacks. But yet the experience didn't seem that out of place. It didn't seem that crazy. Yet it still created this energy. Well, that's because although the experience itself, whatever, as it dropped into the well of the self, some of that energy must have struck a rock, a value, a virtue, a belief that added a lot of energy to that stream. I don't know what that belief was. It's uniquely to you. So, we have to dig. That's another show. But when we are willing to allow this energy to flow down through all of our rocks to create a clean definition of biochemistry, regardless what it looks like, whether it be an extreme emotional energy, whether it be minimal, doesn't matter. We're allowing it to occur. That is what's referred to as living our authentic self. we're allowing emotions to be created. Because as this biochemistry is released into the bloodstream, flows through the body, ultimately into the brain, where the horn of feeling is going to interpret it, right? It's going to convert it back into an energy that we understand. That is living our authentic self. Now, if we are not allowing it to flow all the way down through the rocks, and instead we say, yeah, no, doesn't matter. My beliefs don't matter. My virtues, my values, they don't matter so much. Let's just take a left here. And we created very different biochemistry. We still create biochemistry, but nonetheless, we create a very different form of it. And what we're going to create is what my ancestors and I refer to as silt. The silt is going to come into the horn of feeling, and it's going to start coagulating at the bottom of the horn. Now, what does this mean? Why is this of concern? Well, remember, when the biochemistry enters into the horn of feeling, it's going to expand. It's going to expand into energy. It's being converted from biochemistry back into energy, back into bioenergy, bioelectricity. And so this fluid comes in and it begins to expand. And very much the same way, my analogy here is that your horn of feeling then becomes pretty much a mug of root beer. Well, if you're pouring that root beer in there a little too fast, you may note that the foam just and then all over the side of the mug, right? We have a couple of options. Firstly, the connection that we slow the pour. Whoa, we're not going to pour so much root beer so quickly. That's a management technique, a way of managing how much biochemistry is coming into the horn of feeling. The second part is when we do realize that, well, maybe we poured a little too fast or it expanded too fast. We take a lick of the old finger and stick it in the foam, and what happens? The foam just kind of settles back down, right? Same thing is going to apply using what my ancestors called the head space on the horn of feeling. I call it the cognitive space, because this is where you're thinking through the emotional energy being created. You're able to kind of chunk it up and just deal with, again, you're constantly managing the foam so that the foam stays where it's supposed to. In addition, now, if we were to make a bunch of decisions in our lives where we've created a lot of silt, i.e. we haven't lived authentically, and we've built up silt in the horn, now we have less space at which to do. So we've got to do more management. We're constantly, and to some extent, we may not be able to control this explosion, if you will, of energy within the horn of feeling. Now, remember, from other experience or from other talks that we've had, when this energy spills over the horn, there's two things that have happened. The first thing is we have to know we've lost cognitive space. We've lost that little bit at top of the horn that says, oh, I can control this. I can manage the pour of the root beer, or I can keep sticking my finger in there and keep the foam from overfilling. I've lost that ability, right? So I've lost the cognitive space. When this energy overfills the horn, excuse me, the brain around the horn is not used to dealing with that energy. It doesn't understand. So as this energy lands on this other brain, part of the human brain, the brain just simply fires off its energy at whatever that thing is controlling. So again, this could involve rapid heart rate, shallow breathing, all the physiological symptoms we have of stress, all of them. including up to and including a stroke or other very severe medical conditions, because we've allowed the horn to overflow. This is where anxiety and panic attacks come from, is that this energy is overflowing the cup and it's striking a part of the brain that doesn't know how to deal with that energy. All right? So it's super important that we maintain control of this process. How do we do that? Well, let's take a real quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about steps that we can do every day, every minute of every day, that are not extensive. This is not rocket science history. It's a simple mental management to allow ourselves to retain control of the reconversion of biochemistry back to bioenergy. So we're going to take a real quick break. We'll be right back, and we'll talk about how we can do that every day. All right, welcome back, and thank you for taking that quick break with us. When we went to break, we were talking about steps that we can use every day. So now let's address some of those steps. Well, we've talked about it many times before, and we'll talk about it many times again. The first step is to set our default mental state. How do we do that? We set our mood. Remember, as this energy of experiencing a reality comes into our optic nerves or our ears or whatever, it's going to go through a conversion process. As soon as it goes through that conversion process, the next step is to actually go through what my ancestors and I refer to as the mood ring. The mood ring is a very powerful tool, because the mood ring can actually manipulate, like Photoshop, the image that you just saw. So if we saw, as an example, if we were in a bad mood and we saw a beautiful flower beginning its journey towards the sun in a stark background of dirt and all this other stuff, we may not see the flower. We may only see the stark, unwanted view, because our mood ring is going to remove that flower from the image. Just happens. Also remember that our memories are processing forward and going to provide some level of imagery and some level of experiences through this process we're going to call imagination. Imagination goes into every sensory input that we have, and it's processed through the mood ring, through the whole process to create the memory that creates the imagination that comes in, and the cycle continues. So mood ring is really critical to what we experience in reality. It's part of what it is. So it's important that we first recognize that and set our mood appropriately. If we want to bring joy and life and love and harmony and peace and comfort and contentment, all of those things into our lives, then we have to set our mood to see those things, so that it doesn't eliminate it, using Photoshop, out of the images at which we are processing. So the mood ring is the first important step at making sure we process what we want to see. Not what we're stuck seeing, not what we have to see, but what we want to see. Okay? So mood's very important. Then, as the energy drops down out of the mood ring into the well of the self, we have to understand a couple of things. And the first thing is, what are our values, virtues, and belief systems? Many people are going to give them throughout our lives. What collection do we have left? What's in there? And so when we can understand what those are, that allows us to now know pretty much with certainty what energy is going to be created as this stream of an experience goes through the well of the self. We also have to make sure that we allow ourselves the opportunity to go all the way through the well of the self. If we don't, remember, we're living inauthentically, and when we are living inauthentically, essentially we're building up silt in the horn of feeling, right? So we're limiting our ability to process the emotional state that's created out of the well of the self. So taking time each and every day, excuse me, to investigate what our virtues, our values, and our belief systems are. Understanding what they are helps us to recognize what energy they're going to provide. But most importantly, it also allows us, hopefully, to remember that we can take those rocks out. We can manage those rocks. We're in charge. Okay? So if you find a belief system or a value or virtue that you don't fully subscribe to at this point, take it out of the well. You can do that. Just that way, the energy streams that are being processed through our mood ring down to the well of the self don't hit that rock. Don't provide that energy to the biochemistry created at the bottom of the well. So, taking time during our day to ask ourselves, well, what do we believe in? What are our beliefs? What are our core virtues? What are our values? What do we find important? What makes us happy? What leads us? What rocks lead us to feeling the way we want to feel? Being the way we want to be? What really represents us? And once we can kind of throw out the rocks that we don't need anymore, allow other rocks to come in that do represent what we believe. That way we have more of a recognized, consistent energy being created at the bottom. All right? So then that energy comes up to the well or up to the horn of feeling. As it gets to the horn of feeling, we have to remember that we're in charge of the root beer. Okay? So as we're tipping the bottle of our biochemistry into the horn of feeling, we get to control the flow of that biochemistry. We can decide, whoa, slow, too much, wait, stop. All right? And we can stop the flow. Or if that energy were to happen to hit in the horn of feeling and begin this really quick expansion, we can control it by tapping down and using our cognitive space to think about things of that emotional state that we'll process that in a minute. We'll process that in a minute. Let's work on this, and then we'll work on this smaller part. Again, we're chunking it down. We're breaking down this, what may be a larger emotion, into why do we feel this way? Why do we think this way? Why is this affecting me? Right? The other part of that is to ensure that we don't have the silt. Remember, that silt is when we're living inauthentically. We're going to dump that silt in the horn of feeling. And the horn of feeling is then going to be compromised because now it's shorter than it was a little while ago. Many times we're going to find this when we're living a very potential, faked life. If we're faking out, and we're forgetting our values just to be included in some social circle, that really then is how we're going to build up the silt. Well, the silt then is going to minimize our ability to manage the expanding energy as the biochemistry is converted back into energy. Now, finally, one last stop on this process of thought before we get to memories, and that is this thing called the me gate. The me gate says that we get to decide what energy we want to have. And this is simply changing a perspective, looking at something differently. And we can alter the energy that's now been converted in the horn of feeling on its way to our memories. We can convert that and say, nope, I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to be those other things. I want to be happy. I want to be content. I want to be joyful. Whatever it is, right? And we can do that at the me gate. We maintain control of the me gate. Many people don't use it. We think, oh, whatever our body is telling us that we have to feel, we have to feel, and we don't. If our emotional state says we should be sad or depressed or whatever, we don't have to subscribe to that. And if we did subscribe to it, we don't have to maintain it. So this is the idea of grief. Is grief has a value, has a certain length of value, and that's unique for everybody. Everyone is going to be very, very different in their length of grieving. Some things are more grieving than others. It's just, and our reaction to that event is going to be different than everyone around us. All right. And just because we're receiving some influential energy that says we should be grieving doesn't mean we have to. Okay? No one is in charge up here but you. Period. No one has the authority to overwrite what you've said you want to feel, of what you want to be. So having the courage to be our authentic self, having the courage to change our perspective each and every morning, that we are seeking joy and peace and love and harmony and all those things that we want in our lives. When we are courageous enough to do that every day, we truly are honoring the God tier. And we are recognizing his courage. We are recognizing the justice and the balance that he brought and that he exhibits every minute of every day. And we can do that in our lives as well. All right? So I know you can do it. My friends, I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow, where we'll talk about the wisdom of Wotan. And what is wisdom exactly? And how does it play into our everyday lives? So we'll see you bright and early tomorrow, where we'll talk about the wisdom of Wotan. In the meantime, today, my friends, I encourage you to embrace the God tier, to embrace the courage that he represented, the balance that he brings into our lives, and to find your virtues, your values, your belief systems, and figure out that emotional management that makes you, you. All right? Love and light. Until tomorrow.
Ulfhednar's Belly Snake, a special production of Whispers of the Norse. Brought to you by the Alaska ulfhednar in South Central Alaska. Guidance and wisdom, courtesy of an ancient Celtic Norse shaman. Thank you so much for joining us today.